All right, everyone. So again, welcome so much. Thank you for taking the time and joining the Chase webinar series. I'm Danny Chase, the CEO and founder of Chase Office Interiors. And today is a CEU presentation. And the title of the presentation today is Healthy Walls, Choosing Sustainable Wall Coverings. And just a bit of housekeeping, this is gonna be approximately a 45-minute presentation with a 10-minute question and answer period at the end. So please send all your questions either through the chat directly to myself or to everyone in the chat. And we will make sure that we get to all those questions at the end. Again, for those that are looking to receive CEU credits today, and those who have registered with your IDCEC number, we will be processing your credit for you after this presentation. So check your account within the next 5 business days and you'll see the credit process there, but nothing to do on your end. We will be processing it all for you, provided you gave us your IDCEC number. And also we're going to be recording this presentation, and the recording is going to be available on the Chase Office Interiors website at chaseoffice.ca/events. So in the next 72 hours, the recording will be available. It's a private recording, so we'll be handing that out to those that have send us a direct request to see the recording. And our next webinar is going to be actually in 2022. Crazy to say that, but in 2022 on January the 13th, and it's called A Whole New Way of Working. It's actually going to be a great webinar, very product focused as well, around solutions, product solutions and applications around the new workplace. But it's called A Whole New Way of Working. It's a brand new presentation from the Technion team, and I'm super excited about that one. All right, as for Leah Van Loan, thank you so much for joining us, Leah. Leah is the EVP of Sales for Carnegie. She has been in the commercial interior furniture and fabric industry for the past 30 years. Leah has worked exclusively for Carnegie, a PVC-free company, for the past 21 years. And she has 2 loving kids and a golden retriever named Izzy that keeps her on her toes. So Leah, thanks so much for joining us, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Super happy to be here. If I close my eyes and just listen, I would know what audience I was talking to because of the out and all the accent, which I adore. I want to start my timer so I don't go off. So thank you for being here. I'm gonna share my screen now. And bear with me one second. Let's just hope this goes well. Okay, how are we doing? Danny, is it showing the right? We did a little rehearsal. Okay, we're good.
Perfect.
We just don't need you guys to see my notes. Not that I don't know every word of this. So anyway, welcome. And I am going to get started here, I hope. Okay. So as Danny said, the CEU is all about choosing sustainable wall covering to create healthy environments. And since he did all of my homework for me as far as the credit, I'll move on from there. So it goes without saying that you want to design with materials that elevate our senses when you're entering a space. You also need those materials to perform and to provide value and longevity for your clients. So aesthetics and performance are the 2 factors. When paired together, they're often considered the ultimate design solution. But today I'm here to talk about the point that material matters when selecting finishes for a project. I challenge you to always ask yourself, are you also designing a healthy indoor environment when you're selecting materials? Because we know people ultimately spend most of their time indoors. We know that the interior design and materials selected play a significant role in the human experience and health. So when it comes to creating healthy environments, choosing responsible materials is essential. So bear with me for a second. I realize that some of the slide, is directed to the US. I tried to do a little adaptation, so bear with me because some of these examples are really still pertinent to what you experience in Canada. So I'm not sure that anyone is familiar with Kaiser Permanente, but they are a major player in the healthcare systems, mainly in the western part of the United States. So they set such a great example and set the bar so high for their environments. I just want to tell you a little bit about their story. So as you know, every day, even more so lately, we're seeing and hearing more about environmental impact of our interiors, as well as what's going on in the exterior part of our lives. But we want to, or I want to share with you about Kaiser Permanente, which is one of the largest not-for-profit healthcare systems nationwide in the United States. So their mission is tied to healthy environments, which seems like an obvious thing, that if you're going to a facility to be taken care of, that you would hope the environment wasn't influencing your health in a negative way. So part of Kaiser's mission statement reads, "At Kaiser Permanente, we recognize that healthy communities and a healthy environment are critical to the health and wellness of every person. Creating these have always been central to our mission." So Kaiser has partnered with the Healthcare Without Harm Society, which is their mission is to transform healthcare worldwide so that healthcare reduces its environmental footprint and becomes a community anchor for sustainability, as well as a design leader in the global movement for environmental health and justice. Another example is the Healthier Hospital Initiative, which I don't believe is in Canada, but it may be something relative to a different actual title. So Healthier Hospital Initiatives has a safer with their safer chemical standards to ensure that 30% of the annual volume of furnishings and furniture's purchases eliminate the use of formaldehyde, pure fluorinated compounds, PVC, antimicrobials, and all flame retardants. It seems natural that hospitals would be aware of how an environment affects the health of patients, visitors, and staff. But this concern about sustainability and healthy environments is not only happening in healthcare, it's happening everywhere. So in hospitality market, we've got a couple of examples to demonstrate a shift in this market as well. The Intercontinental Barclay Hotel in New York remains steadfast in its mission to be New York's most sustainable hotel, setting the goal to be among the first hospitality properties worldwide to align with the United Nations 2013 Agenda for Sustainable Development. The hotel at Oberlin in Ohio achieved LEED Platinum status, and the Virgin Chicago Hotel achieved LEED Gold. Just a few weeks ago, an article in Architectural Digest with Kelly Swadden, partner and chief brand officer of Atelier Ace, which is the design team behind Ace Hotel brand, said, "We're finding that this commitment to environmentally conscious decisions not only pushes the industry forward, but gives agency to guests in choosing ways to travel that align with their values." So there's some Canadian things in here for you. When I Googled Canadian sustainable hotels, these were the top 5. I'm guessing that most of you are familiar with some of these, but I thought it was interesting to take a look at your 5 best sustainable hotels in Canada. So in addition to the hospitality market, of course, the corporate sector is doing the same thing. And Google is once again, probably that I'm aware of, probably the most sustainable of corporate environments that in the United States anyway. So decisions related to the workplace interior are increasingly aligning with brand values and those of employees that they're hoping to attain and attract and retain. In 2011, Google announced it would no longer use any construction materials that are found on the red list created by the Living Building Challenge. Construction wishing to meet the criteria of the Living Building Challenge cannot include any of the red list chemicals in their materials. So many organizations have created their own lists of materials that should be phased out of production due to health concerns. All of them are regularly updated as new research emerges. It's interesting to see where the organizations overlap, be it LEED or LBC or EPA or companies even like Perkins and Will. So this Venn diagram, it shows you the complexity of what is valuable to a particular group. So, and where it all meets in the middle, is the most sustainable of regulations, but every different organization may look at something a little differently. And I will not go through this Venn diagram. So there's no question that the voices demanding sustainability are getting louder, demonstrated by our recent environmental meeting over in Switzerland, maybe was. Forgive me if I don't have the right country, but you saw worldwide, you saw a lot of demonstrations. Many architectural and design firms have also made their own commitments to carbon neutral. So let's move into some of the typical 3 considerations when designing a space. So traditionally, your first decision making for materials is the aesthetics of the materials to relate to the environment that you're designing. So aesthetics is first, traditionally, performance second, budget third, sometimes it's first. So sustainability may not be on the top of the list or low on the list of considerations. So today we're going to reverse the order on this list. We're going to move the environmental issue to the top. We're going to break down how high performance commercial wall coverings affect your health and the health of the environment, and how you can make it better, better material selections that are already available on the market. Before we go any farther, let's make sure we're all on the same page as to what is a high performance wall covering. So wall covering for commercial buildings has got to be really tough. It has to withstand a lot of abuse, especially in the public spaces, and it needs to have a minimum amount of upkeep. To be appropriate for a commercial space, a wall covering must meet 3 codes. ASTM E84 for flammability. Again, I'm sorry if I don't have the right code for the Canadian market. And then so ASTM E84 in the United States for the flammability. I believe yours is ULC 102. I'm hoping that that's the right flammability test for commercial, that I have the right test for the Canadian market. It must meet crocking codes for color fastness and light fastness. And I'll talk about each one of these in detail. So most important is that all wall covering for public spaces need to be ASTM E84 rated. This test analyzes flame spread and smoke development, the way fire and smoke move through a hallway. Different end uses and areas of the building require different class ratings. Higher use areas require a class A rating, and lower use areas require a class B or C. So crocking is how well the dye is adhered to the yarn. So if it's a polyester, we'll use that as a reference point. It should not come off on your hand or your clothing or your cleaning materials, whether they're dry or wet. The minimum that you want to look for in a commercial wall covering is a grade 3. And then with light fastness, grade 3 is out of 5. That would be your minimum. So let's talk about light fastness. All textiles, dyes, and paints are vulnerable to the power of sun. And natural fibers are especially sensitive. This image shows what happens to material when it's been exposed to sunlight over time. So you can see where the painting was hanging in this room. The material in its original color, while the surface around it has shifted or darkened as a result of UV exposure. But fibers and dyes for commercial spaces are designed to be more UV resistant and need to meet grade 4 on a scale of 5 after 40 hours of exposure. So we know that paint is typically the go-to solution for walls if budget is a factor. But in many cases, it can prove to be more expensive as a long-term solution, because there really isn't enough because it is not tough enough for for commercial wall settings. So think about the constant maintenance required to upkeep the corridors when it's in a painted state. We conducted a life cycle analysis that shows the short and long-term costs of high-performance wall covering versus paint. The chart illustrates that though paint may be less expensive initially, over the lifetime of a space, a high-performance wall covering can be a better value with fewer maintenance needs. This study is based on the assumption that walls need to be painted every 3 years. And the painting schedule is typically even more frequent in high traffic areas, like multifamily corridors, hospitals, schools, or dorms. In addition to the numbers, I think most of us can relate to real life situations. So here are a few testimonies from interior designer about real projects where high performance wall coverings were used. So Lauren Stanton used a high performance woven polyethylene wall covering in the elevator lobby for his Lofts at River East project in Chicago, which is a multi-family condo project. He said it was important to specify a wall covering that not only added to the overall aesthetic of the space, but could perform in high traffic areas for years to come, offering both beauty and function. Or from Glenn Hamilton of Johnson and Wales University in Charlotte, North Carolina, who said the very high profile lobby of our auditorium was painted white, and on a twice-a-year painting schedule, we replaced it with a white high-performing wall covering 3 years ago, and it hasn't been touched and still looks like new. So we spoke about the codes that are necessary for wall covering to be used in a commercial space. Let's discuss some of the other high-performance criteria. The industry standard for high-performance wall covering is Type 2. Our recommendation would be to look for products that meet or exceeds all Type 2 standards for cleaning and durability. This covers performance, scrubbability, and stain resistance. Secondly, high performance wall covering for public spaces must be easy to clean and maintain. Dirt and stains should not easily adhere, and if they do, they should be easy to remove, and hopefully removed with cleaning agents that have few solvents or heavy chemicals in them. As you can imagine, this would eliminate natural fibers like cotton, linen, or silk. While some of those have a somewhat environmental story, they're more appropriate for residential spaces to their delicate nature. When you think of high performance wall coverings, most initially think of vinyl, otherwise known as PVC. It is one of the early high performance wall coverings. It dominates the market because it's tough, design malleable, and affordable. But it is a controversial material because of how it is made. Its potential effect on indoor air quality and disposal issues come to the surface when you're talking about PVC or vinyl. Many organizations focus on healthy materials are urging designers, architects, and end users to find alternatives. There are a growing number of environmental concerns about PVC or vinyl. According to Greenpeace, PVC is the most environmentally damaging plastic. The PVC life cycle is in its production, use, and disposal results in the release of toxic chlorine-based chemicals. These toxins are building up in water, air, and the food chain. This concern is gaining momentum with design leaders such as an example, in 2015, Perkins and Will published the white paper called Healthy Environments, What's New and What's Not with PVC. Melissa Coffin, the principal investigator with the Healthy Building Network and co-author of the white paper, says, PVC will always require a highly toxic vinyl chloride monomer and produce even more potent dioxins during manufacturing and disposal. PVC uses chlorine chemistry, and in its manufacturing process, and when vinyl burns, say in a fire, it combines to create dioxin, which is a deadly toxic chemical. Now, there's a debate about how much dioxin is tolerable. Some suggest that there is no such thing as a safe level of dioxin. The EPA has been debating this for over 20 years. The process also spins off and creates complex chemical waste that falls into the category of POPs, persistent organic pollutants, and PBTs, persistent bioaccumulative, you got it, toxic chemicals. As their name indicates, they do not degrade, they're persistent. These toxic chemicals linger in our landfills, in nature, and in our own body. Sorry about that mispronunciation of bioaccumulative. There we go. So let's talk about phthalates. Because PVC is rigid, it requires additives and plasticizers to soften it. The most commonly used of these are phthalates. So why are these phthalates so problematic? They're entangled with the vinyl chemistry, but they're not actually bonded to the molecule. This means they can easily escape with the application of heat or organic solvents. I'm sure you've heard a lot about consumer products that contain phthalates, like makeup, cosmetics, medical devices, and toys. And many of these products many of these products now make sure to market when they are not contained in phthalates. The general consumer is much more aware of the problematic nature of phthalates, which are linked to medical issues such as listed on the screen. So what about recycling vinyl? It does keep vinyl out of the landfills and incinerators, but you have to ask what type of vinyl was recycled to make the new product. Is it the old PVC that's being recycled? PVC that has old chemicals is a problem. So you can see how this may be problematic, especially when it comes to ending up in a landfill. So what options do you have? The great news is that there are other well-established options on the market. A good place to start is by looking for alternatives that is green. A good place to start looking for alternatives is Greenpeace's plastic pyramids, which ranks the toxicity of plastics from the worst at the top to better and best as you move down. You see that PVC is at the top, and from there you move down to polyurethanes, polyesters, polyethylenes, and polypropylenes, and the best being bio-based polymers, which are the cleanest plastics. So using this as a guide, let's start with the better and move to the best choices for high performance wall coverings. If you're looking for a wall covering with a look of a natural fiber, there are many beautiful wall coverings referred to as durable woven wall coverings. These options are the ones that will most closely resemble natural materials like silk and cotton and raffia, which are all beautiful inspiration points, but not durable enough for commercial end use. So you want to look for a wall covering that's made of a blend of polyester or polypropylene yarns. They're woven with high quality yarns and are very durable and easy to maintain. The yarns can be spun to give a natural textural look, but they're more durable and easier to maintain. Try to find a durable woven wall covering that's made with a solution dyed yarn. The solution dyeing process integrates the color into the fiber as it's being made. As a result, the color is dyed throughout the fiber, locking it in. So we're going to pull in the carrot versus radish analogy here. So as you know, cutting through a carrot, the orange appears throughout the entire carrot, but if you cut into a radish, the color is only on the outside. So how exactly do they do this? It's about when the dye is added to the yarn process. With traditional, or also called package dyeing, the dye is added at the end of the yarn production. This is when you get a result similar to a radish, where the color is just on the outside of the yarn. With solution dyeing, the color is added to the pellets before the yarn is extruded. So the color is part of the entire yarn. It's just like the color goes all the way through a carrot. It's not just sitting on the outside. And because they skip right to the finished yarn, there's no energy used to dye the yarn and no water required to wash excess dye. This means the solution dyeing process has numerous environmental advantages, including saving water, less energy, and fewer chemicals to dispose of. Traditional dyeing is a notorious polluter because it is so difficult to remove all the dyes before the water leaves the system. These are striking images that remain with us, the impact this has on water sources. Solution dyeing also produces fibers that are extremely color fast, making them easy to clean, even with a diluted bleach solution. And since the color is evenly spread throughout the fiber, so it is very consistent when it's woven. The next best option to consider are those made out of recycled content. The first recycled polyesters came from the waste stream generated in spinning and weaving manufacturing processes. Rather than tossing it into a landfill, the unused material was reconstructed to create new yarns. LEED designates this as pre-consumer materials, and some call it post-industrial. While you can get LEED points for using this, LEED looks even more favorably on post-consumer materials that reuse waste created outside the industrial processes from both commercial and private activities. It's a great way to keep what would be trash out of the garbage. A great example of this is the commercial market is the Patagonia's use of PCR fleece, where they've saved over 86 million plastic bottles from the landfill by recycling them into yarn and textiles. The Reprieve yarn uses 15 recycled bottles to create one flag. Now, here is where we will give you a glimpse into what we'll see in the future from sustainable perspective for high performance wall covering and textiles. It's a technique called air dyeing. It's a dyeing process that takes water out of the equation by using 90% less water than traditional dyeing methods. And at the same time, it reduces emission and energy by 85%. Traditional dyeing in the textile decoration is the third largest consumer of water in the world. And we know water is a precious resource. The air dye process begins with using all synthetic fibers for its material, which can be made from things like recycled PET bottles. Then it uses dispersed dyes that are applied to a paper carrier. Air dye uses heat to transfer the dyes from the paper to the surface of the textiles, coloring it at the molecular level, making it color fast and bleach cleanable. Even better, all the paper used is recycled and dyes are inert, meaning they can go back to their original state and can be reused. We're already seeing air dyeing used in fashion. In fact, Costello, cannot pronounce that last name, Tagliapetra, let's go with that, debuted an entire air dye collection as far back as 2009. So we're confident this technology will make its way to our industry as well. Okay, so we've talked about durable woven options and sustainable dye techniques. Next, let's cover what to use if you're looking for a non-woven, embossed or printed look. So why a non-woven? Sometimes you don't necessarily want a natural look. Sometimes you want a super wipeable surface with no crevices or fuzzy yarns to capture dirt or germs. So in this case, a film or a non-woven product is a great option. I digress back to the reasons why we would not consider PVC in this area. So let's cover some alternatives. One of the most durable non-woven high-performance wall coverings to come to the market is TPO, otherwise known as thermoplastic olefins. Remember the plastics pyramid we saw earlier? TPO fits towards the base with some of the greenest plastics available. Most TPOs use 20% recycled content, 10% recycled glass in the face, and 10% recycled content in the backing. The recycled content will also contribute to lead points. But that 20% recycled content is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of what makes TPO a healthy wall covering choice. TPOs do not require the addition of PVC, plasticizers like phthalates, heavy metals, halogenated flame retardants, or formaldehyde. One of the easiest way to tell the difference between PVC alternatives and their vinyls is the smell. That new car smell that so many people love, that's actually vinyl upholstery releasing VOCs, volatile organic compounds, chemicals that evaporate at room temperatures. I'm also going to insert in here that the new car smells, you may notice that really don't pertain anymore because they actually changed the PVC in car like dashboards to TPO or thermoplastic olefins. So the car industry has also gotten more sustainable. Alternatives like TPO should have no smell as they meet California Indoor Air Quality Specification CA01350 and quality for LEED low emitting material credits. TPO is not new per se. It's originally developed in the auto and roofing industries as alternative to PVC. I find this so interesting because both markets are much tougher on their products than we ever are with wall covering. Car interiors have taken an amazing amount of human abuse, and roofs have to stand up to rain, sun, and all the other elements. Just shows how tough TPO actually is. Some confusion can come up with TPOs, specifically in the hospitality sector, where at times older standards are used when someone is looking at classifications of a type 2 wall covering and the base quality or usability of the product simply by its weight. The old standard was that a vinyl material needed to be a minimum of 20 ounces per linear yard to meet, sorry about that, to meet performance for type 2 criteria for a type 2 wall covering. In 2013, the Wall Covering Association released a new standard that takes into consideration that vinyl alternatives naturally weigh less, and therefore the minimum weight for these alternatives is 15 ounces per yard. Many thermoplastic olefin wall coverings range in weight between 16 to 20 ounces per linear yard, therefore meeting and exceeding this weight minimum. While TPOs weigh less than PVC, this new standard confirms that they offer equivalent performance while using less raw material. This would be comparable to the use of lighter yet high performance materials used in today's buildings, consumer products like phones and computers, as well as airplanes. In effect, TPO wall coverings deliver equivalent or better performance than a PVC using less raw material. So we've talked about durable woven wall covering when you're looking for a natural wall covering look, and TPO as a solution when you want a non-woven or printed solution. So let's talk about the third option, which marries the look of a woven textile with the performance of a non-woven. So these are high performance woven wall coverings made of polyethylene. Polyethylene yarns are solution dyed, the most durable alternatives and the safest in terms of environmental footprint. And as I said, these are an excellent solution if you want the look of a woven, but the performance of a wipeable non-woven product. Polyethylene is a great high performance alternative to PVC. Looking at the pyramid again, as you can see, the polyethylene is one of the safest plastics produced. It's solution dyed, so it has very efficient production processes and almost no emissions. And its simple plastic formula makes it easy to recycle. Polyethylene yarn can get you LEED points in scientific certification systems, indoor air quality, material health platinum, cradle to cradle silver, AX Fact silver. Note that some of these companies offer polyethylene wall coverings. However, they have not been certified by the organization. Make sure you ask if this isn't published. Believe it or not, there are even bio-based high-performance plastics offering the same great performance as a fossil fuel derived material from a rapidly renewable plant resource. So how's that possible? Most plastics are made out of fossil fuel. Bio-based ethylene yarn is made out of renewable sugarcane instead. The bio-based material looks the same, installs the same, cleans the same, passes all the same codes, and even prices the same. So it's a win all the way around. The benefits of this change to bio-based materials derived from sugarcane versus non-removable, as in fossil fuel, means that for every 1 ton of raw material produced, 2.5 tons of carbon are captured by the plants. While polyethylene yarns get great certification, the bio-based yarns get even better. Facts and seeded cradle to cradle certify as gold, and VinCot and the USDA also certify it as a bio-based product. Bio-based polyethylene is also imperative certified by the Living Product Challenge. These are major advancements. And what's it made out of doesn't affect what it looks like or how it performs. So what's next on this? What's the next source of material being going to be? Corn, hemp, sawgrass, or even algae. The research continues into finding other bio-based solutions. So let's recap. So what we covered here is, and create a checklist of all the things you need to consider when specifying healthy walls. First, you need to make sure they meet these 3 minimum codes. Look for wall coverings that meet or exceed all type 2 standards for cleaning and durability. If using a woven fabric, select the best yarns, starting with solution dyed that are cleanable with a diluted bleach solution. If not, then look for recycled yarns. The use of Green Peace's plastics pyramid as a starting point when selecting wall coverings or fiber is a good place to start. Go for bio-based plastics whenever possible. Avoid heavy metals, phthalates, and solvents whenever the extra chemistry isn't needed, as those will create VOCs and other side effects. And the last item on the checklist, but very important one, is to end the conversation, is to look for third-party certifications. Do not accept first-party or self-certification as a viable, approved green product. So thank you very much for spending your, I'm assuming, lunch hour with us. And let me know if you have any questions. I'm hoping that we do in the chat, and I'm happy to address any of those questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Leah. Much appreciated. And also wanted to give a shout out to Gabriella Caldwell from Concentric Spaces for introducing us to Leah and bringing this presentation to the Chase webinar series. So there are a couple of questions that I have in the chat, and then we'll see if there are other brave souls that want to speak up as well. So one of the questions is there a relationship of texture versus durability? What would you say, Leah, when you're looking at texture versus durability?
That's a really good question. It depends on the content of the yarn. As I talked about in the presentation, if you're using a polyethylene yarn, which is sustainable, then you can create beautiful textures, and the durability factor is not actually a factor. If you're using a polyester yarn, the durability factor is going to go down a little bit, because if you're cleaning a polyester yarn and you scrub it, the yarns will start to disintegrate, in the sense of it becomes like hairy, like when you're wearing a sweater, and it, after wearing it a while, it starts, getting a little disintegrated, we'll say. So you can definitely have texture and performance, but you're going to look more towards the polyethylene yarns to do that.
Okay, great. And someone else just said something in the chat here. And can we get a reading list of links for research? Is it something that you could send to me, Leah, where I could share with all the participants, like some material for and links, etc.?
Yes, I can do that.
Awesome. I will have that sent out to everyone when we get that together. That's great. Another question I had in the chat earlier was someone's asked, what would be one of the biggest misunderstandings in wall coverings? Is it, what's something maybe to watch for, some of the big misunderstanding when considering wall coverings in a commercial environment?
Good question. Misunderstanding.
Or something to watch for when looking at one product or one solution versus another, is the way I read it.
The different types of wall coverings? Is that what's being asked?
What it's kind of it's reading in a way that when somebody's considering, wall coverings in a commercial environment, and obviously you have different competitive product, is there some sort of a maybe global misunderstanding that the average person may have when considering which solution is best for the application?
Well, I would say the biggest misunderstanding is that vinyl is the ultimate of products to use for durability and cleanability. And as I demonstrated throughout the presentation, that is just not the fact anymore. Vinyl has a tendency to be probably the least expensive on the market, although we're expecting that to have a big change next year with just the costs of everything, that it's probably going to catch up with each other. So at this point, for say quarters in a hotel that they traditionally use is probably $10 to $12 a yard. It can be that inexpensive. Vinyl can also be really expensive when you get into the heavier embossed ones that can be equal to any of the other products that I've showed you here. But I think the biggest misconception is that vinyl is the ultimate product to be using when you have alternatives. I would,
Okay.
the other suggestion I would make, and it isn't so much about product, but on the design side and specification, I would also always ask for a seam sample from your installer, because you can have a very beautiful, expensive wall covering. And if you have an installer that's really not really good technically at hanging it, they can really destroy the look of the wall covering. So by asking for a seam sample, then you can always go back when you're doing your checklist to look at the seams and say, this is what you gave me. This is crooked, or it's got, fraying at the seam. So that is a big, that's a way to prevent that from happening, because then the installer knows what he has to live up to.
Yes. Yeah. Great point. Great point. Good. And could we have any other questions from the participants? If you want to take yourself off mute and ask any questions. What about price variance? Leah, looking at the different grades, is there significant difference from one grade to the next grade, or any comments on that?
Yes, I would say we've already talked about vinyl, so we'll just take that out of the picture. So the TPO, the non-woven, vinyl alternative, that traditionally will run, and I'm giving you base prices, not like if there's a volume or that kind of thing, but that typically is going to run in the 20s and 30s. There are some in the market that are heavily embossed and thicker. That goes, higher than that. Your polyesters, you can get really nice looking polyester wall coverings for even in the low 20s that look really beautiful. So if you're not too concerned about, maybe it's a corporate office corridors or whatever that, people aren't quite as abusive to the walls, so to say, you can get really beautiful wall covering for even in the low 20s. When you're getting into the polyethylene type yarns, those tend to go more towards 30s and 40s and up, depending on the decorativeness of it and the design. So that kind of gives you a benchmark. Anything less than, if taking vinyl out of the picture again, anything less than a base price of 20, I would say, move cautiously as far as it holding up and having a good installation.
Okay.
But once again, going back to my presentation about, again, thinking, oh, we'll just paint, it's not very expensive. But, going back to the idea that, you have to touch up, paint often, you've got, downtime of, possibly being in lobby spaces, public spaces, that was my key to be quiet. Lobby spaces that, you've got people in there, having to work at night or that type of thing. So again, the upfront cost is always going to be higher with wall covering, but in the long term, it's usually better.
Okay. And what about the trends that Carnegie has been seeing? You've seen different applications being done in different types of environments, or applications that you'd like to speak of there?
You mean as far as design or just the materials being used?
No, materials being used, and maybe even the type of buildings or type of different spaces with healthcare, whatever it might be, that
Right.
you've seen any sort of
Right.
different trends at all?
Sure. I would say in general, healthcare is not used in healthcare situations, although we do see some some really exceptional, beautiful installations like at Stanford Health and NYU. They do use wall covering, but most of the time I come up against, we don't use wall covering for the most part. But we do see them using materials, like a polyethylene material for more of acoustical wrap panels. So if they're not using it for walls, they are using it for panels. I don't know if I really answered you, but I haven't seen any other trends, I would say, than that. Hospitality is still, they still like wall covering a lot because it does make everything look a little richer and, higher end, even if they're not spending a ton of money on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I could jump in real quick, I think a trend that I've kind of seen is the multifunctional. So having it have a design aesthetic and impact, but also being acoustic, and kind of hitting that like multi-purpose, right? Like where you're spending your money and kind of having dual uses or more than one purpose out of what's happening on your walls or from that perspective.
So,
Great.
Danny, if I believe now that we're kind of through the actual presentation for the CEU, if you wouldn't mind me just talking a little bit about what Carnegie offers.
Sure. Yep. If we can just say we're stopping the CEU and now you're able to speak freely there. Yep.
Unless
Yep.
somebody has anything else to answer before I talk a little bit about what we do have to offer.
Yep.
Okay.
Please just yep. Go ahead.
Well, so what I really want to talk about is, if you're not familiar with Zerel is Carnegie's high performance, extremely durable woven wall covering that's been on the market since the early 80s. And it is a polyethylene yarn. In the last 8 years, we have developed bio-based Zerel. So it is derived from sugarcane. So you have this extruded plastic yarn that holds up to extreme cleaning, extreme abuse in your lobby areas or for movable walls. It's an amazing material. It is cradle to cradle certified gold. And it's the only product on the Living Building challenge. It's really an amazing story because it's beautiful, it's sustainable, and it wears beautifully. And then we also offer, as you can imagine, because we talked about it in the presentation, we do offer thermoplastic olefin TPOs, wall covering, as you can see, even in the slide, in that little background, that's one of them. So we have a lot of those that are going to be your less cost. They're printed with dyes that don't use heavy metals, so they're sustainable, but they look just like a vinyl wall covering and hold up equally. And then we have everything in between. We have polyesters, we have polypropylene yarns and that type of thing. But Carnegie is a PVC free company. We have never ever sold 1 ounce of vinyl in the history of the company, which was started in 1950. And that was with purpose, because our competitors sell so much vinyl, and you can imagine, as far as capital income, if we sold vinyl, it would raise our capital quite a bit. But we choose to not ever sell that type of material, because we feel like you gotta walk the talk, and it's we don't feel like it would be right for us on one hand to give you a sustainable material, and on the other hand say, but if that doesn't work, here's mine. So we're very proud to say that Carnegie actually stands up to what they promote.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's fantastic. There is one other question in the comments here. It's saying if buying wallpaper online, personal residential use, is there anything to look for? There's not a lot of information out there about it. So any comments at all? And if somebody's looking for some sort of residential type use?
No, as long you can, you can use anything residentially, because there's really nice paper wall coverings out there. It's really based on price. And do you want a woven, do you not want a non-woven? But there's some really great looking residential. You can go to Wayfair and get it, or you can go to Costco and get it. But it's really based on preference for yourself, whether if you have kids, do you want to be able to wipe it off? Or if you don't and you want a really rich environment, you can use silk on the walls.
Yeah, great. Good. Is there any other questions from the crowd? We could take one more question. Other than that, we'll be giving people some time back to their schedule today. All right. Well, again, thank you so much, Leah. Much appreciated. And again, really, obviously, there's so much knowledge and background that goes into what you do and products that you create. And I really need to hear the story of Carnegie as well and what they stand for. And so, yeah, just want to thank everybody for joining the Chase webinar series today. And you're going to get a survey request within the next hour. And we really look for your feedback on what is it that we could do better next time in terms of format or whatever it might be. We're just looking for everybody's feedback on because we're constantly looking at improving and bringing more and more value to the community. And also a reminder to register for our next webinar, which is January 13th, 2022. Can't believe it, but it's called A Whole New Way of Working. And you'll see some product solutions as well around the new way forward. And you can register at chaseoffice.ca/events. And so thank you so much, Leah. Thank you so much to all the participants. A reminder that we'll be giving everybody the CEU credits who has given us their IDCEC number. So those will be automatically processed within the next 4 to 5 business days. Other than that, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Leah. That was fantastic.